All right, welcome. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a world that, affects every single one of us, but is often completely invisible. We're talking about the high stakes universe of hospital management. It's really the engine, right? The thing that drives the quality of care, patient safety, and honestly, whether our healthcare institutions can even keep their doors open. So, how exactly does a building full of machines and people become a real place of healing? Well, that's what we're going to break down today. First, we'll lay the foundation. Then, we'll get into the four key principles that guide everything. After that, we'll look at the big goals they're always aiming for, who's actually in charge, and finally, we'll tie it all together to see why this whole management thing matters so much. All right, first up, the foundation of care. Before we can really get into the nuts and bolts, we've got to be on the same page. What are we even talking about when we say hospital management? So at its core, it's the art and science of juggling everything a hospital has. The people, the equipment, the money, all for one single goal, taking care of patients. And it's so much more than just budgets and spreadsheets, right? It's like this incredibly complex dance, making sure a patient gets exactly the right care from exactly the right person at exactly the right time. And here's a really great way to think about it. Imagine a hospital is this complex living thing, right? It's got all these moving parts, doctors, nurses, labs, pharmacies, you name it. Well, hospital management is its central nervous system. It's the brain that coordinates everything, making sure every single part works together smoothly, and just as importantly, ethically. Okay, so now we know what it is, but how do they actually do it? How does it work in the real world? Well, it all boils down to four key principles. Think of it as the manager's toolkit. And here they are: planning, organization, direction, and control, the big four. And what's really important to get is that this isn't some one and done checklist. It's a continuous cycle. What you learn from the control part feeds right back into planning, which means the hospital is always learning, adapting, and hopefully getting better. Okay, so it all kicks off with planning. This is the big picture strategic stuff. And a perfect example of this is, say, opening a new ICU. I mean, you can't just find an empty room and call it a day, right? You've got to plan for everything: the specialized wiring and plumbing, the highly trained nurses and doctors, all that life support gear, and a mountain of regulations. So once you've got that plan, you need to get organized. This is where you build the actual structure. The classic example is a good old organizational chart. It's the blueprint that shows who does what and who reports to whom. Without it, you just have chaos. You get departments not talking to each other, delays, confusion, and that can be a real risk to patients. Next up is direction. Now, this is the really human part of it. This is leadership in action. It's about guiding the teams, keeping an eye on the day-to-day stuff, and really motivating people to do their best work. Think about those weekly team meetings where leaders check in, solve problems on the fly, and keep everyone moving in the right direction. And last but not least, you've got control. This is the crucial feedback loop. I mean, how do you know if your plan is actually working? You've got to measure it. A really powerful example is how hospitals track infection rates. If they see those numbers even start to tick up, that control system kicks in and they take action right away, like new hygiene training to get things back on track and keep patients safe. Okay, so those are the four actions. That's the how. But what's the end goal? What are they all driving toward? Well, every hospital is basically on a high wire, performing this constant balancing act between three huge goals. And it really truly is a balancing act. You absolutely can't just focus on one of these and ignore the others. Think about it. If you give the best care in the world, but you go broke doing it, well, the hospital shuts down. And if you're super efficient, but patient safety takes a nosedive, you've completely failed at your most important job. And this really shows you that constant push and pull. So you've got quality of care. That's the big one, the absolute non-negotiable. But to even deliver that, you need operational efficiency. I mean, you can't have someone waiting 6 hours for a critical lab result. And holding it all up is financial sustainability. Because let's be real, the best hospital on earth can't help anyone if it can't afford to keep the lights on. So, who's actually making sure all this happens? Who's following the principles and juggling those goals? This is where the people come in, the leadership team and the committees that provide that all-important oversight. You know, when you think of leadership in a hospital, it's not just one person in a big office. It's actually a system that works on three different levels. You've got the big picture thinkers, the people who run the day-to-day operations, and the clinical experts on the front lines. So at the very top, you have high-level management. We're talking about the directors, the C-suite.
Their job isn't to get bogged down in the daily details. Their job is governance. They set the overall vision and make sure the whole organization is on solid ground, both legally and financially. Then you've got the area chiefs. These folks are the critical link between the big strategy and what actually happens on the ground. These are the heads of the ER, the pharmacy, the surgical department. They take that big vision from the top and turn it into reality for their teams every single day. And then, right there on the front lines, you have clinical leadership. These are your senior doctors, your lead nurses, the pros who make sure the actual medical care is safe, effective, and based on the best, most current science. They're the ones writing the playbooks, the clinical guidelines, and watching patient outcomes like a hawk. But here's the thing. These leaders don't operate in a vacuum. One of the most important tools they have for oversight and quality control is the hospital committee. This is where you get a bunch of smart people from different departments in one room to tackle specific, really important issues. And this table here is a great snapshot of some of these key committees, using the system in Mexico as an example. You can see that many of these are actually required by law. They form this essential safety net for the hospital. You've got committees dedicated to everything from overall patient safety, to preventing infections, to helping with really tough ethical decisions. And just to show you how detailed this gets, take a look at the one for pharmacovigilance. It actually does two jobs. One half is pharmacovigilance, which is all about tracking bad reactions to medicines and vaccines. The other half is called technovigilance, which does the same thing but for medical devices, like a faulty IV pump or a bad hip implant. Okay, so we've just built this whole complex structure, right? We've got the principles, the goals, the leadership, the committees, the whole shebang. But let's bring it back. What's the bottom line? Why does getting all this right actually matter in the real world? Well, when you boil it all down, good management isn't just about paperwork. It has this huge ripple effect. For patients, it means safer, better care, and a better experience overall. For the staff, it means a workplace that's organized and supportive. For the hospital, it means earning the community's trust and making sure it'll be around for the long haul. And really, it's paving the way for the future, where doctors and nurses are getting more and more involved in these big decisions. And that brings us to one last really important thought. That old idea of managers manage and doctors treat patients, that's really starting to fade away. As we see more clinicians stepping into leadership roles, that responsibility for quality and safety becomes something everyone shares. So it leaves us with a big question. What's our role in all this? As patients, as professionals, as just members of the community, how can we help build and support this culture of quality in the places we literally trust with our lives?